Oh, hello. Welcome to the Top 2 Inches Rugby Podcast. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm new to podcasting and I'll basically wing it for the next 45 minutes. On this first episode, I will talk about the podcast, who I am and why I love rugby. I'll look at the premiership regular season coming to an end, what happened, who did what. I'll look at the grassroots rugby and my local club, where sadly at the moment there is no rugby because of the pandemic. For the last couple of seasons, I have been doing a fantasy rugby league with my best friend. I am currently the champion, but this could all change at the end of this season. And then finally, I'll look to next week's podcast to see what might be happening. So as I said, I'm going to basically chat about how I started playing rugby. I actually started playing rugby at 11 years old. So I guess by modern standards, you could say I was late developer. However, it was at my secondary school where I played my first game. Obviously, rugby was part of the curriculum at the time, and you had to play. And I enjoyed playing. Got into the team. I actually started at number 8. And although I was quite a big lad for my age, I was surprisingly quick, I guess. And being a big lad, I kind of was able to smash through all the smaller lads, and I really enjoyed playing the game. And there was another lad there who played for Torquay Athletic, and he said, my dad coaches the under 11s, why don't you come down, training's twice a week, play on a Saturday. And I thought, yeah, why not, I'll give it a go. And I remember going down, doing the training, really enjoying it. I think there were a few other lads. So I got selected for Torquay Athletic under 11s, like I said, at number 8. And I played my first game and actually scored a hat-trick, which was pretty cool. And I kind of continue from that point on. I kind of a bit like, I think Ellis Genge started at number 8 and ended up in the front row. I moved to tight head prop, which again I thoroughly enjoyed. Obviously being a prop is in the front line, and totally more confrontational, and just an amazing experience. I was a bit of a shit when I was younger, to be fair, quite aggressive. And for me, rugby was a way of getting that anger, getting that aggression out in a controlled manner. And yeah, it kind of went on from there. I remember, going up through the ranks at Torquay Athletic, moving into the under 16s. Actually, in my first year of under 16s, I was 15 at the time, and was playing under a great coach who was a bit of a Torquay legend. And the local cup for the under 16s was called the Fisherman's Cup. So you'd play local teams like Brixham, Newton Abbot, Ivy Bridge, etc., and had been to a few finals but had never actually won the Fisherman's Cup. And in my first year as an under 16, we actually won the Fisherman's Cup. It was against Newton Abbot, and the final was played over at Astley Park, in front of a sellout crowd. Torquay Newton Abbot is quite a rivalry, and it was pretty hostile at the time. And I think that we actually were favourites to win, but got off to a really poor start, but then managed to come back and win effectively. I scored a try off the back of a maul, and kind of went under the posts. At the end, we had to, I think, if I remember rightly, Newton Abbot scored a try to get back in it. Newton Abbot fly half, missed a kick to win it. So it was pretty crazy, really. I then progressed into my second year of under 16s, actually captained the side. We had a few lads left over from the previous year, so we had a good, strong base to the team. Unfortunately, Torquay at the time decided that an under-15s team was needed, and we lost a load of players. The under-15s team was an absolute quality team, and I had no doubt in my mind that if they had been in the actual under-16s, we'd have won it 2 years in a row. I was actually captain that year. I think we ended up third in the league, and missed out on the final, which was pretty devastating, really. And then I moved up into the Colts, where I would then spend the next 3 years under the tutelage of who, for me, was a proper old school coach. You didn't fuck with, and the stuff he probably did back then, he wouldn't necessarily get away with today. I remember one game, my good mate, who always felt never got himself psyched up enough for the game. We were in the changing room just before the game, and he walked over to and smacked him across the face and told him to get fucking angry. And it actually worked. Went out onto the field and just destroyed everybody. And in my first year as an under-19, a Colt, we reached the final of I think it was the Devon Cup, where we played local rivals, Brixham. And Brixham were a bloody good team. They had a lot of really good, talented players. And we actually had Lee Mears, the England and British Lions hooker, in our team. And I remember it really well. We were winning, but Brixham were on our line. Now, because of the rules, Mearsy couldn't start, and you could only have a certain number of players starting from those types of schools. And he came on, and we had a scrum on our own 5-yard line. I was a tight head, and I remember packing down, and just before he or we hit the scrum, he loosened his bind on me and put his hand on the centre of my chest. Bearing in mind it was a Brixham feed. So we've gone down, and I've thought, whoa, what the hell's going on here? What's he doing? And so I pulled him in tight as I could to keep the bind secure, and drive through the centre of Brixham. And as the ball came in, he dropped his arm, put his hand over the hooker's eyes, and basically put his hands covering this hooker's eyes. And as the ball came in, he hooked the ball back, and we broke out from our own try line. And that was my everlasting memory of Lee Mears. What a guy, what a player. You know, went on to play a successful career at Bath, and like I said, England, British Lion tourist. And you know, that's my little claim to fame, is that I got to pack down with a British Lion hero. He was just such an awesome player. And we went on to win that game, and we were Devon champions that year. In my second year, we lost a good group of players who were the third year Colts, but we had a really strong team. Unfortunately, in that season, we were knocked out of the first Devon Cup game against Plymouth Albion, who I think might have gone on to win the competition. And I remember we were down playing in Plymouth, and I was slightly off the side of the ruck, got a ball played to me. I had a defender running at me, and I drew the man, pinged the ball 2-on-1 to our winger, who went under the posts and scored. And that would have been the winning try, except the referee called it back and said it was a forward pass. It was never a forward pass. It was a perfect pass, and we should have won. But that year we were also entered into the National Cup, and we we got to the quarterfinals of that National Cup. I think we beat Haywards Heath away to get into the quarterfinals, where we had to travel up to Harrogate. And I remember that it was really annoying because I couldn't travel. I was really sick, and I couldn't play. And they drafted my brother in, who went up there. I think he started on the bench, but then came on and did a good job. He was also a tight head prop. And that season, unfortunately, we didn't win anything. In my last year as a Colt, again, we got to the final of the Devon Cup. Again, we had a fantastic team, so many talented players. Number 8 was amazing. Two flankers who were just complete dogs. We had another England representative who was a really, really good hooker. And we got to the final. We were playing Tavistock away. I scored a bulldozing try. It was quoted as in the paper from Tavistock's 22 under the posts. And I think we won 20-10. And obviously, being captain, it was a really proud day, an amazing way to finish off my time as a Colt for Torquay. I think I might have had a few seasons out then. I think I fell out of love for the game a bit, but then came back, played for Torquay seconds, and then got selected to play for Torquay first at Southwest 1 level. So we were playing teams like Gloucester Old Boys, Hornets, just to name a couple. And it was really good. Played a few seasons, and then kind of petered out again. Went away, came back. Played my final season for Torquay first team. I was playing tight head. We finished second in the league, but Torquay, unfortunately, by that time were down in Western Counties West, and we had a away game in the playoffs to see if we would go up to the next league. Unfortunately, we went away and just were blown away by this team. They had a load of Gloucester Academy players, and just completely took us apart, really. And then I kind of ended it that season. I just thought, nah, I ain't gonna bother. I'm done. I think I was about 30 at that point. I was getting to the point where everything was hurting and I couldn't be bothered. I did actually in 2020 come back to play, only for the second team. It was a bit of a bet with my dad. I'd got to 40 and thought, I'd love to have one more go. And I said to my old man, I'm going to go back. And he said, you're a fucking idiot. You're too fat. You're too old. Don't bother. So part of me wanted to prove him wrong. And I started training. And again, I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, he passed away. And didn't get to watch me play my returning game, which was really sad. Because obviously he'd been there, right from day one, at under 11s, taking me to away games, coming to home games. He had an active role in the club, and it would have been awesome for him to be there just to prove him wrong. I played that game in the hottest weather I think I've ever played in. I managed to play 80 minutes minus 10 minutes in the sin bin for back chatting to the referee, which I think was only my second yellow card ever. First being away at Matson, where I was lying over the ball, got the shit kicked out of me by their pack, and the referee decided to send me off for 10 minutes. So yeah, that was a little insight into my rugby experiences. I was very lucky to also represent Devon at schoolboy level, just like my dad had, which was a very proud moment, and play in the Tamar Cup against Cornwall, which was a draw, 9-all. And now I'm an avid watcher of rugby. I support Leicester Tigers, who obviously have a long history and are currently not doing very well. And to kind of, obviously with all the pandemic-y stuff that's kind of going on, I just felt I needed an outlet, and that is giving this podcast a go. So you might be asking why it's called the Top 2 Inches. Well, the Top 2 Inches comes from a former coach at Torquay. He was a Welshman, a teacher, and at cult level he taught the backs. And you would always hear him on the sideline saying, the top 2 inches, boys, the top 2 inches. I can't do a Welsh accent now, I'm afraid. And basically what he was saying, you need to win it in your head before you can actually win the game. And that really stuck with me. That resonated in my head. And that is why my podcast is called The Top 2 Inches. So, on to the next section, a review of the Premiership last game of the season and what happened and who did what. This wasn't actually something I was going to be talking about, but it is news that has just come out onto my feed. Eddie Jones has selected his training squad, and I'm just having a little look through, some interesting selections. Obviously you've got the kind of stalwarts of the team in Elliot Daly, Owen Farrell, George Ford, Johnny May, Ben Youngs. It's nice to see that Joe Merchant, who else? Ollie Thorley's in there. Willie Hines, I'm not so sure about. I think maybe he's probably, a little bit past it now. I think maybe a more younger scrum half, and someone that's definitely been in a lot of good form, like Spencer of Bath, would have been a better selection. I appreciate it's just a training squad and things might change, and probably will do. But, these kind of people, we need to be looking to the future. George Furbank, I guess he's giving him a bit of a second chance. He didn't have a great Six Nations and hasn't been in the best of form for Northampton at the moment. It's nice to see Nathan Earl in there. Maybe I think a Cook and a Zinger should have been in there, really. He's coming back into form. Or the other Bath winger, McConaughey, he's playing really well. So there's a few selection choices that I'm not 100% sure about. But, fair play to Eddie in terms of the backs. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 uncapped players in there. So obviously I know that, players from Exeter, Sale, Wasps, etc. haven't been selected. So looking at the forwards, again, there's a few players, some stalwarts in there. I think Dave Ribbons is a good selection. Not too sure about old Jack Singleton. Dunbrandt's there, which is good. Genji's there. Jack Clements, don't know a great deal about that lad. Mark Wilson, the Newcastle flanker. It's good to see him back in there. I think it's an interesting selection. And obviously, like I said, it will change. Good old Eddie. Eddie knows best. As I said, the end of the season's here. All the league fixtures have happened or not happened in this case. And next week we'll see the playoff to see who is crowned champion of the Guinness Premiership. Where to start? So obviously interesting that the Sale Worcester game was postponed. My understanding is that there were 16 positive COVID-19 tests amongst the Sale players and staff. I know that Premiership Rugby have been working with Public Health England and have said that because of the significance of the game, obviously if Sale win, they're in the top floor, they're in the playoffs. Postponing the game was the best option as they wanted it to be played. I'm not sure if this is going to happen, but it will be interesting to see what does come and what the outcome is. Obviously, if Sale win, Bath miss out. And there's also the possibility, if the game does go ahead and they beat Worcester, securing the 5-point win, I think they can just leapfrog Bristol, which then obviously would make the playoffs much more interesting. It would mean that Exeter would play Bristol, and then Wasps would play Sale. So we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, the Gloucester game with Northampton was cancelled due to the virus concerns. I think also there was elements of Northampton not having enough front row, and Gloucester were given the 5-point win. So moving on, interesting game, Bath at Saracens. I thought Bath started well, getting into the game. They got built up 2 early tries. But to be fair, this got me a little bit worried, if I'm honest. And Sarries are Saracens. They did what they did. They fought back, and managed to pull off a draw at 17-all. What I did think, or I have thought, and my mate Ollie will love this because obviously he's a Bath supporter, and I don't normally say this. I'm normally saying, oh, it's nice to see Bath fading away again and their season becoming kaput. Since the restart, I think Bath have just got better and better. And I do, to be fair, think they probably are the second best pack in the league. That's my opinion. And Spencer, Saracens, the scrum half, was class and should be the England starting 9. It'd be interesting to see what happens, but I think he's got to be putting his hand up there for Eddie. Eddie, come and get me. I am your 9, potentially with Ben Youngs as a bit of a backup. Personally, the guy I couldn't remember earlier, the Wasp scrum half, Dan Robshaw. That's Chris Robshaw. Dan Robson really should be starting or potentially back up to Spencer. Moving on to the Wasps Exeter game, 46-5 win for Wasps. I thought it was a very good win for Wasps, but obviously all the Exeter big guns, your Jack Knowles, Simmons, those guys weren't playing, they were being rested. And I think it'll probably be a different scenario if Wasps and Exeter do meet at any stage in the playoffs. Moving on to Bristol against London Irish, with Bristol coming out on top 36-7. Bristol were all over Irish. Bristol have quality players all over the field. They were deserving of securing their position in the playoff spot. Be an interesting one if they do go away to Wasps in the semi-final at the Rico. As it stands at the moment, they are 2 quality teams. Not sure how that one pans out, but it'd be worth watching. Just want to mention Randra's try. It was fantastic, but for me, Piers O'Connor, that was his try really. He made it with that sparkling run and the handoff onto Randra. Boom, try time. I'm going to be finishing on a game that is really difficult for me to finish on because it is the Tigers. Firstly, I want to say it was a great way for Rob Shaw to sign off with a win at Welford Road and end his Harlequins career. Good luck to him in America. As a Leicester fan, this was seriously a disappointing result. It was pretty much a full-strength Tigers team. I know there are a few other players to come in and join, but it was, in my opinion, shambles. And Borthwick has a lot to do to turn it around. Otherwise, Tigers' fate is already sealed for next season, which would be tragic to see them relegated. But I think that's a real distinct possibility, and one which my best mate Ollie would love. I obviously wouldn't. As we're coming up to the end of the show, I want to talk about the Fantasy Rugby League that me and my best mate have been doing for the last few seasons. It's through the Rugby magazine, and my best mate Ollie, who I played rugby with at Colt level for Torquay, he has been the champion for several seasons, up until last season, where I successfully took our little individual title from him. He I remember during the season he was so arrogant. He was just like, "You've got no chance. I'm 650 points ahead already. You might as well give up. It's game over, loser. Don't bother turning up each week. It's done." And thanks to Cobus Reinach from Northampton, I managed to pull the points back, and in the end I actually went ahead of him, and I think I finished the season about 200 points ahead of him, and it was nice to get the crown, as we call it, or be the king, be the champion. He was gracious in defeat. Unfortunately, this season has not gone to plan. He obviously coming into the last game, he's now probably nearly 250 points ahead of me. We're coming into the playoffs, and the season continues. But I'll be honest, and I don't think I can catch him. So he will get the crown back, and no doubt he'll lord that over me for the forthcoming season. And I guess from my perspective, I'm already thinking ahead now. I'm looking at what next season could bring, who are Newcastle going to bring in, who's in their squad, who was playing well in the Championship until COVID obviously took over and the season ended. I'm also going to be looking at filling my team, I think, with players who can play multi-positions. So people like Harry Thacker, hooker flanker, people like Umunga, fly half fullback, guys like that. I think I need to maybe look at young talent, guys that are doing really well for their teams. People like Marcus Smith, the Willis brothers, that other young Wasp lad Bradbury. He looks pretty decent. To try and stretch the money that we have each season to build our team. It's going to be an interesting one. I think to be fair, this season Sale have done really well, and a lot of their players have kind of filled our teams. But I think next year Wasps are probably going to go well again. And also, you can pick up little things, little individual players. Don Brandt, for example, is always good value. He scores lots of points. Who else? Props, they never really score many points. Ben Abano is probably the highest at the moment. I think he's managed to accumulate about 400 or 500 points this season. Ollie Haskins from London Irish has done well. So, it's a really interesting bit of fun that we do. Obviously, playing against my best mate, we have that kind of relationship that is always... It's always a challenge, who's going to be the best, who's going to come out on top. When we play golf together, it's always a competition. And it's just really good fun. So that is something that I'm going to be chatting about over the weeks to come in the podcast, looking at my selections, what's going to happen, what's moving forward. Just bringing you a little bit of insight into mine and his relationship as well. Looking forward to next week. Obviously, I'll have a chat about the Sale Worcester game, if it goes ahead, and if it doesn't, what does that mean? I'll review or what has it meant. I'll review the semi-final playoffs. We'll know who's then in the final. Probably a little bit of an update on my Fantasy Rugby team, how I get on. Have I caught Ollie? Shouldn't think so. He's too far ahead, and he'll just be loving it. And I will also maybe have a guest. Not 100% sure who or if it will even happen, but we will see. So that's the end of the show. Thank you very much for listening. If you are interested in listening to episode 2, hit the subscribe button now. Obviously, we're available on all good platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I guess all I've got to say now is thanks for listening to the Top 2 Inches Rugby Podcast.